You're probably watching this either on Foxborough Council on Aging and Human Services Facebook page or on Foxborough Cable. Thank you for joining us for a question and answer discussion about this year's annual town meeting for the Foxborough town meeting. So I actually have four special guests. I have Bill Keegan, the town manager, Chris Gallagher, the DPW superintendent, Paige Duncan, the planning director, as well as George Samia, who is the director of finance. So I'm going to bring them in to start talking about the annual town meeting warrant. So bringing Bill in now.
Okay.
How's it going, Bill? How are you?
Great. Good to see you, Mark, and good to see everybody. I can't really see you specifically, but I will tell you that it's good to be able to join you because I haven't done this in a long time, and I know that we've been separated for a while, but I'm glad to be able to be back with you, at least even in a virtual format. So this year we have a total of 11 articles for consideration on the town meeting warrant. The first three articles are pretty standard articles. One is the annual town elections. The other one is the town reports and reports of committees. And those are actions that will be put forward by the clerk and the town moderator in terms of if there are any reports to give. And certainly in the results from the election will certainly be presented, which most people already know about, and the town reports, if anybody has any additional reports they want to provide. The annual town reports themselves will be available to be dispersed and handed out at town meeting in case anybody were looking for one. The final versions should be on our hands by Friday, and then we'll be able to hand them out to everybody at town meeting. All right, so the first real article for consideration this year is the operating budget. And the annual operating budget this year is down rather considerably in comparison to other years. In fact, this is the lowest budget increase that we've had since 2012, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the main driving reason for that, of course, is the fact that we've had COVID-19 affecting the community and our revenue sources for the past few months. Things are starting to ease up, so that's good news in the sense that we have actually taken a very conservative approach towards next fiscal year. And what we've done is we've trimmed out about $1.75 million of spending and funding for consideration in this next fiscal year's budget, which is due to begin on July 1st. This is probably the latest time we've actually had a budget warrant consideration in recent memory, at least, and probably for quite some time, primarily because of COVID-19 restrictions. And the meeting this year will be held with all the safeguards put in place so that people can feel comfortable at the meeting. There are going to be spacing requirements for everyone to sit. And right now, we should, based upon the guidelines passed out by the state, is that we should be at 40% capacity. So that what that means is that the building itself is about 700. We hold about 700 people in the auditorium at the high school. So we could comfortably seat about 300 people at the room, making sure that we provide appropriate social distancing for everybody. So that's going to be done. The town clerk and moderator have been working on those details to make sure it's done as safely as possible. But going back to the budget itself, we're looking at a budget this year of excuse me, of $83,952,000, and that's an overall. But that includes. I want to be very clear about this. That includes both the water and sewer enterprise funds. And so if we take a look at the general fund budget, the general fund budget is $75,430,215, and that is up 2.86% over last year. So that's one of the lowest increases we've had in many, many years, and obviously for good reason. So what's even more interesting is if you take a look at the municipal costs, they're up less than 1%, 0.71% overall in terms of municipal costs. Or $129,213. The public schools are up 1.3 million at 3.82%, and our fixed costs are in at 591,262, and that is that's only up 3.1%. The schools again 3.82%, and the town is 0.71%. So there's no real huge increases in the budget. I think that there's been some information that's been put out recently, at least in an article that was done in an opinion page, talking about much higher numbers, but those are not consistent with what actually we're putting out in the budget at this time. So I don't know what version or where that discussion came from, but that is not truly reflective of what we're presenting for consideration at this town meeting. So I just want everybody to be clear about that. There are no new positions linked into the budget for this year. We have not. There are no real significant additional costs. There are certainly some cost of living adjustments that are included in this, but there are actually several contracts that have not even been approved for this consideration. So they just fell out of consideration because of COVID-19 restrictions. So there are a couple contracts that will not even be considered for increases in this current contract in this current budget. So. George Samir, who is the town director of finance, has worked with me closely on putting this budget together. This is a different team that we've had in quite some time. So we had a little bit of a challenge making sure that we covered crossed all the T's and dotted every I, and putting the budget together and warrant together for this year. I have a new administrative team in the town manager's office. Also, George has a different team in his office. And while George and I collectively have about close to 70 years of municipal experience, which is a little scary to talk about, but we've done this before. But every town has a little bit of a nuance, and so George is used to doing it in one place, I'm used to doing it in another, and so even the process here was done a little differently than what I'm used to seeing, where the finance department actually had a lot of control or involved in a lot of the process that was put together as part of this. So I just want people to know that we had a few challenges along the way, but we're actually, I think, in pretty good shape. So we'll get into that detail a lot more at the town meeting when we get there. So, but I wanted to at least pass along to you that we are also looking at a capital plan this year, which is one of the lower capital plans that we've had in quite some time as well, and that's Article 5 that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is Article 5 is let me see, just get to that for a second. Total capital plan this year is $1,616,500, and these are things that were actually, for the most part, the biggest amount of money that was there was $650,000, and that's Chapter 90 money, which technically is a state aid amount that's being transferred or being made available for expenditure locally, and so. But the rest of the numbers are things that we absolutely needed to do. For instance, in assessing, we have to do an update in our system there to maintain the legal requirements to go through the assessing process. Also, in the information systems, there are some requirements of our IT systems that need to be updated this year, and so we had to put money against that, as well as we had to do the same thing for the public school amounts. For free cash as well, for use as well, because we had some IT expenses as well as a new bus that had to be bought as well. So in the joint publics in the fire department, we had an increase of $289,000 for and also using that for apparatus receipts to pay for a new vehicle, for 2 new vehicles there as well. These are replacement vehicles. They're not added vehicles. They're replacement vehicles. And then on the highway Chapter 90 side, we again $650,000 in highway. We also we have a payment that's due on a sweeper payment it was a lease purchase arrangement that we have to make that payment this year. So that takes care of that. And on the water enterprise and sewer enterprise. Chris Gallagher is going to be joining us here today too, as he can speak to those items as part of the capital plan as well. But the water items involve a couple vehicle replacements that need to be done because the vehicles just don't work and they need to be replaced. And also the sewer, there was a SCADA system upgrade so that we can monitor the system, the sewer system more carefully, and that was for $50,000. So again, all across the board, we had a very small amount we have a very small amount of capital expenditures for this year. That takes care of Articles 4 and 5. Article 6 was a transfer of money into the stabilization fund, which we normally do every year. We put $100,000 back into stabilization for free cash, and so we're using that amount to transfer into stabilization as well. That's an annual event. I just want to spend a second on that to go back. You'll see at the annual meeting, we had a little bit of an error that will be pointed out to town meeting members at the meeting, where we actually included the $100,000 in the budget process, and so we would have effectively voted it twice. The town moderator is going to adjust that so that first $100,000 will not be acted on, and so that will we'll just vote on the one that's in Article 6. Article 7. There was $61,208 for payment of National Grid bills. This is something we hope will be cleaned up. We think we're finally cleaning up for this year. We had actually gone through a process of acquiring our streetlights and also doing some retrofits with new lighting for the streets. So we put in all LED lights. We got a huge grant for doing that with National Grid and also from the state. And also we get, but the problem was the billing side, and as a result, National Grid did not properly bill us for some of the credits that we're doing in that area. So it took a while to get that funding rectified and the billing rectified. So we had to go back, and ended up getting bills from a couple of previous fiscal years that we have to fix. And and the law states that we cannot spend money on a previous fiscal year expense. So that's why we put the article. So we had to put that article on the warrant for consideration as a result of that. So that explains Article 7. Article 8 is revolving funds, and that provides annual spending limits. This is something that's required by state statute that we do every year. And this year we added a couple new ones, and I think this will be near and dear to some of the listeners' hearts, so that we've added some additional capacity for senior trips of $120,000, and also for Council on Aging Human Services and for Council on Aging community events. So that if we get money in, we can then turn around and spend it out of this account. That gives us the revolving fund means that money goes in, money comes back out. So this will give you the ability to do that without having to wait till subsequent fiscal years to appropriate the money to do this. So this actually provides a little more flexibility for Mark and his team to do some work with you on trying to address those main concerns, some various events that goes on there. All right, Article 9. Article 9 and Article 10, I'm going to defer to Chris Gallagher on Article 9. Maybe he can talk a little bit about his capital items as well as Article 9. This is a $9.4 million borrowing issue, and I'll have Mark speak to the details of why that's important. And then going on to Article 10, that will be Paige Duncan, who will speak to a land swap that we're contemplating doing for at town meeting, which will provide us some more parking capacity down in the downtown, as well as provide for an opportunity to build some affordable housing in the neighborhood in the downtown as well. So I'll turn it over to Mark, back to Mark for a few minutes, and have Chris speak to Article 9, and then move on to Article 10. Okay. I think.
Hi, Mark. Mark, I think you're muted.
Ah, there we go. I was muted. I could hear me. So, Chris, welcome. You can talk about that borrowing issue, that 9.4.
Sure. Just like to say thank you, Mark, for putting this together, and Bill for welcoming me to talk about it. So the water department's looking for $9.4 million. We are continuing to improve the system. We have an age system in Foxborough. A lot of it is 50 to 75 years old, has not been touched in a long time. So we're at the point where we're trying to finalize some of these large replacement projects. Included in this $9.4 million, we are looking at a new water tank. This will replace the 1938 tank over on Main Street that is offline. It was time for that to come down and come offline. It was kind of a hazard to the system, so we removed that from the system. This is a replacement for that. We have spent this year doing a study on that, feasibility study on where the new tank should be located. Make sure that as we improve the system, we're doing it in the right way. So we are looking at $4.5 million for a new water tank that'll actually go and sit next to the 3 million gallon reservoir up on Hill Street. We are looking at $2.5 million to replace the water main on West Street. This project is going to be done in conjunction with the dam replacement. So we'll replace the piece of pipe under the dam itself, but we'll also replace from South Street all the way up to the town line. This pipe is undersized. It's a 6-inch water main. It is also 60 plus years old now. And we've experienced, in the 6 years I've been here in Foxborough working in town, we've experienced 8 water main breaks, usually one in the winter, one in the summer. Some pretty big impacts when there's 400 plus people at the campground. There are also pressure issues up in the Conant-Caton neighborhood, where anytime a hydrant gets open, we lose pressure up in that neighborhood. So we're looking for $2.5 million to replace that water main. We are looking for a storage building. Approximately $400,000 is what we're budgeting. We are closing in on the completion of the treatment plant down at Pumping Station Road. That should be live this summer is where we're planning. Along with all of that site work, we are also trying to get somewhere to store our vehicles down there. Previously, everything was parked outside, which is not the best thing for an aquifer where you have wells. So we are looking for a storage facility that'll be able to house all of our vehicles, all of our equipment, and give us cold storage, similar to the fabric top buildings we have here at DPW for both salt storage and vehicle storage. The fourth item in this borrowing is the rehabilitation of the Route 1 water tank. That's the tank that currently says Barracuda. It sits next to the stadium. That tank is now 20 years old and has had very little maintenance done to it to this point. So we are looking to do a full rehabilitation of that tank, and then it will enter into a 15-year maintenance agreement after that, where we'll get a full rehab up front, and then we'll get a full rehab in 15 years, which will help extend the life of that facility, that tank. This is similar to both the Hill Street Reservoir as well as the reuse tank, the blue tank across Route 1. Both of those received full rehabs within the last 3 to 4 years, and those are both under a 15-year maintenance agreement with a contractor that's suitable to do that work and maintain that infrastructure. So that rounds out the 4 items. So that gives us the $9.4 million, and we're going to keep working to improve the system.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, I'm actually going to bring in the town planner, Paige Duncan, to talk about the articles that involve her. Hey, Paige, how are you?
I'm great, Mark. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I'm outside. Even though we are back in town hall regularly, we are on reduced staffing, 25%. So, and actually today was my day in the office, but my flat tire had a different idea. So luckily my staff stepped up for me, and I get to sit out here on the deck. So my article has to do with Article 10, and this is actually a land swap. The 2 properties in question are, one is 15 to 17 Market Street. That's actually one address, 15 to 17. It's a housing authority property that has been in disrepair. Looking at the records, it looked like it's been boarded up for well over 10 years. So probably even longer than that. I believe it used to house 2 families in there. But like I said, it's been vacant and derelict in the neighborhood for 10 plus years. So that's the one property that's known as 15 to 17 Market Street. And anybody who knows Judy's Flowers, it's on Market Street back there, right next to Judy's Flowers area. So that kind of gives you some context. And there's just an old building. It's not torn down or anything. Nearby, a little bit down the street, is 17 Centennial Street. And that property at one time had a house on it, but the house has since been torn down. It was in disrepair. And this property was obtained through a tax taking. The town just obtained it this year, as a matter of fact. So in talking with the Housing Authority and planning, we've been working very closely together, trying to work on housing in Foxborough. You might have heard all our talk on housing. We started to realize that these two properties are similar and yet different. And so we thought it made great sense to arrange a swap, and both groups have agreed with it. What we are proposing to happen is to have the Housing Authority take over the 17 Centennial property. That's more in a neighborhood, with the ultimate goal of putting up most likely a 2-family home. That's what's allowed by right. And that's what they lost over on Market Street. So it would basically be a 1-for-1 replacement. Obviously, it would be the new construction, to be really quite lovely, I'm assuming, and attractive to the neighborhood. And then over on 15 to 17 Market Street, we have the opportunity for that land to now come to the town instead of being the Housing Authority land. And what we'd like to do is convert that into a parking lot. And in fact, the developer, or the permit, shall I say, for the fire station project that has been issued includes a condition that the developer of that project tear down the dilapidated building at 15 to 17 Market Street and build a 14-space parking lot. So that is a requirement of that permit. And although that project is an appeal, I would imagine that any development on that site, the fire station site, of which there will be something done there since the town owns it and it's sitting empty, but whatever development would occur would also include that parking lot requirement if for some reason the current developer doesn't follow through, which we aren't expecting to be the case, but so that is the plan right there. It feels like a win-win. The Housing Authority gets the opportunity to build a 2-family in a nice neighborhood, and the uptown area gets a little bit more parking, and the neighborhood in that area gets rid of an old broken-down house that, like I said, has been in disrepair for 10+ years, and gets some alleviation of some perceived parking problems. So that's about all I have. I'm glad to take some questions. Mark, you're muted.
Of course I am. Thanks, Paige. Really appreciate it. I'm not seeing any specific questions for you. The only thing that someone has asked, Michelle Morelli has asked, is the town looked at any grant programs, federal and private. I asked if that was to her, if that was in general or in regards to the article that Chris was talking about. I haven't received a reply, but I can tell Michelle, I can tell you that the town, even my own department, we have 3 separate grants that pay for a lot of the expenditures and some of our staff too. So if I get another question, I will bring you back in. Thanks, Paige. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. And we're actually going to bring Bill back in.
Yeah. Okay, Mark. So just to further respond to Michelle's comment about grants, the town just recently applied for $1 million grant that was done through the CARES Act, and so we're looking to offset the costs of some of our COVID-19 expense, as well as some anticipated costs for schools for next year, to try and look at reducing having more laptops and computers available for kids to distance learn if we need to. So we're in a position where I think we've actually done a pretty good job of leveraging as much federal and state funding capacity as we can. There is also talk right now that at the federal government level, that an additional amount of money in the trillions of dollars is being looked at to aid cities and towns and states throughout the entire country due to COVID-19, and that's being debated right now on the Senate side, and I'm told that the president is going to support that. I'm also hearing that the House has already submitted a rather substantial proposal for that, which was about $3 million, and I think the Senate side will probably come in at probably about half of that. But either way, there'll be more money made available to cities and towns to provide us some additional offsets for costs that we might incur as a result of COVID-19 impacts. That bit being said, we are going to talk about our revenue situation in Foxborough. We have done a significant job of reducing our revenue expectations for next year. We've reduced our local receipt amounts by $1.5 million. Our expected receipts, $1.2 million, $1.2 million that we were expecting to receive. And then also we reduced our new growth expense by about $300,000, about 33%, almost over $300,000. We've also reduced our state aid expense, our expected state aid amount by about 15% as well. Now, to offset some of that, we've used some of our local revenues to address that. Foxborough, again, is in a better position than most because a lot of towns at this time of year don't have any free cash. Foxborough has started this process with about 3.2 million, if I'm not mistaken, George. So we've had about $3.2 million of free cash available to us, and so we're going to use about $500,000 of that to offset some of those anticipated reductions in revenues. That was at the recommendation of the advisory committee because they wanted to take even a more conservative approach than we did in terms of estimating our revenues. And so there's no danger in doing that because we obviously were trying to be conservative and trying to do the right thing and not put us in a bad spot. So, but the good news is that we're starting to see the town actually bounce back. Some have talked about whether this would be a V-shaped or a W-shaped or a U-shaped type recovery. All indications are right now that it's more closely aligned to more of a V-shaped recovery. We're seeing things bounce back rather quickly in terms of permits for development. We're starting to see a lot of folks applying for permits at the building department, and that's a good sign for us when we see that. That surely is an indication that things are back on track. Also, while we don't see as many events at Gillette Stadium for this calendar year, we do anticipate seeing a fair number of events next year at the end of the fiscal year. So in other words, you've got don't forget that our fiscal year runs from from July until December. Until June of next year. So even though there may not be much for this calendar year, we do anticipate some level of NFL football at the stadium this year. Though the NFL has not given us any guidelines on that yet, we do anticipate some of that to be occurring. We will probably see events occurring in the spring into June of next year. So we will probably recover on some of those funds anyways. And there are a number of different other indicators that we've looked at. So we've taken a really hard look at that position. And so we're doing all the best we can to make sure that we're balancing the budget with all the appropriate steps that we can do to continuously be conservative here in Foxborough and make sure that our services are maintained at the level that people are used to seeing. So that's where we are. There's one other article that I wanted to just talk about, and that was Article 11. This was a animal control article submitted by the animal control officer, and it actually amends the code a little bit to provide a better definition of public nuisance, and amends Section A of Section 78-2 in terms of violations and penalties, which, by the way, needs to be done to be more consistent with what the state statutes allow, and also provides another further section in subsection B of 78-8 to replace to do some homework and cleanup of some of the dates that were established in the book. It's in the bylaw itself. So those are things that we needed to do. This is more of a housekeeping type article, but just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. And so all in all, there are really only 8 articles for consideration before the town meeting. The biggest ones, of course, are the budget and capital plan. The others should go without a whole lot of discussion, but obviously you never know when you get to a town meeting what folks become most interested in. So we have to wait and see how that plays out. So that's what I have for now. Anybody else have any questions? I'm happy to take questions at this time. Oh, you're still on mute, Mark. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm producing this whole thing here. There actually hasn't been any other questions. I'm sure that If you're watching this live, you can ask a question, and Bill, Paige, Chris, or George can answer it. If you're watching this after on the replay on Facebook, if you comment below, I will do my best to try and get an answer as soon as possible after you comment it. Bill, and can you just give the details, just in case someone out there, in case they don't know, of when the dates and times for town meeting are?
So town meeting is on June 15th. It's Monday evening at starting at 7:30 p.m. It will be at the high school, and so we encourage everybody to get there. Actually, a little bit early this year because, as you know, there'll be more appropriate steps being taken to make sure everybody stays safe, and so we would need to have that in place, and so we want to have people get there as early as possible. So I'm pretty confident that the building will be safe and that all appropriate precautions will be taken. We just did the elections, and Bob Cullen did a nice job of putting all the right precautions in place. So I think we'll be in pretty good shape.
That sounds good. Thank you so much, Bill. And George was next to you there. Thank you, George. And also thank you, Paige and Chris, for joining us for this discussion. Thanks so much.
Great. All right, great to see everybody, and hope to see you at town meeting.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Have a good one. That was great. So if you are watching this after the fact, if you comment below, again, I'll try and do my best to try and get as many answers to you as possible. If you're watching this on Foxborough Cable, feel free. You can actually email me, mcraig, C-R-A-I-G, at foxborough.ma.gov. I will reach out to whoever needs to answer that question, get the answer for you, and get that back to you as soon as possible. Again, thank you to Chris, Paige, Bill, and George for spending some time talking with all the seniors and anyone else out there to talk about the annual town meeting. For everyone else, have a good one. Thank you so much. Bye.